Good afternoon and welcome again. This is Linda Chenya and welcome to the public board meeting of the Baltimore City Board of School Commissioners for April 29, 2020. Just a reminder, if you have not yet, please to mute your phone. The call moderator may do so if you haven't done that. First, I'm going to call the roll of the board to identify who is on the call, and just a reminder to my board colleagues, I will be doing this as we do each of the votes, so remember to unmute in order to vote. Commissioner Bondima, I see you. Okay, I see you. I can't hear you, but I do see you. Commissioner Brooks.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Can
I
you hear
heard
me
you
now?
did. Yes, Commissioner
Okay.
Brooks.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Frank.
Good evening, yes.
Yes, thank you. Commissioner James Hassan.
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Lynn. Commissioner McFadden.
Yes.
Commissioner Reed. Commissioner Richardson.
Yes.
Commissioner Roberts.
Yes.
Okay. And I'm present. So if I did that, I did not hear Commissioner Lynn or Commissioner Reed. Is that correct? So we have
Yes.
8. All right. Is there a motion to reopen the meeting?
So moved, Richardson.
Thank you.
Second,
Is there a
Bondima.
second? Thank. Okay, and this is for those who are in favor of reopening the meeting. Commissioner Bondima?
Yes.
Okay, Commissioner Brooks?
Yes.
Commissioner Frank?
Yes,
Commissioner James Hassan?
Yes.
Commissioner McFadden?
Yes.
Commissioner Reed? I'm sorry. Commissioner Richardson?
Yes.
And Commissioner Roberts?
Yes.
Yes, and I'm in favor. Any opposed? Any abstain? I have 8 in favor and 2 absent. So thank you. So that motion passes. I'm going to ask our Vice Chair, Commissioner Richardson, if she will lead us in a time of recognition of the passing of city school students and employees for a moment of silence.
Sure. I would like to take the time to recognize the passing of our city school students and employees. Brixton Kat Henfield. Brixton was a second grader in the home and hospital program. She was no ordinary student. She had the type of energy that draws you in. From the very beginning, Brixton made it clear that she wanted to be treated like any other student and not like a cancer patient. She was bigger than her cancer. Despite being in pain, she was eager to learn. She soaked up the lessons like a sponge. Not only was Brixton dedicated to her studies, but she was also an avid reader. Like many girls, she loved fairy tales the most. Brixton knew all the Disney princesses and princes. She could tell you the story of each princess without looking at the book. Her spirit will always be connected with all of those who created a bond with her. Brandon Powell, who served in city schools for 15 years, 4 months as a special education paraeducator. His latest assignment was at Edgewood Elementary School. Mr. Powell unfortunately departed on April the 9th, 2020, and will be missed greatly by his family, friends, and city schools. Kevin Antonio Williams, who served in city schools for 8 months as a teacher, an elementary teacher. His latest assignment was at Highlandtown Elementary Middle School. Mr. Williams unfortunately departed on April the 13th, 2020, and will be missed greatly by his family, friends, and city schools. Eric Pugh who served in city schools for 10 years, 9 months as a teacher, secondary teacher. His latest assignment was at Polytech Institute. Mr. Pugh unfortunately departed on April 15th, 2020, and will be missed greatly by his family, friends, and city schools. I'd like for us to take a moment of silence in honor of these precious souls. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to check one more time. Has Commissioner Lynn joined us? Okay. If not, then I'm going to ask if there's a motion to approve both the prior session minutes as well as the closed session summaries.
So moved, Frank.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Richardson?
Thank you. And I will do the roll call for the count. Commissioner Bondima, are you in favor?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Did you say yes?
Yes, I did.
Thank you. Commissioner Brooks,
Yes.
Commissioner Frank,
Yes.
Commissioner James Hassan,
Yes.
Commissioner McFadden,
Yes.
Commissioner Richardson,
Yes.
Commissioner Roberts.
Yes.
I'm in favor. Is Commissioner Reed with us?
Yes.
Anyone?
Yes.
Okay. Are you in favor, Commissioner Reed? Sorry.
Yes.
All right. Anyone opposed or abstaining? So I have 9 and no abstentions and no one absent. Okay. I would like to at this time. I'm sorry. I collapsed one thing, so I've got to get myself back together again. I want to take time on the part of the board and city schools to really give some thanks. The mayor, the city council president, and the city council members this week have been great partners during this especially difficult and challenging time. In addition to helping to feed our students and families in Baltimore, once again, the mayor, the council president, and city council members have shown their commitment to Baltimore City students when it passed on Monday night the emergency legislation that will provide funding to help close the digital divide. We look forward to our continued partnership. We will probably get more information about these funds and how they will be used, but we are very, very thankful for this partnership as we work together to help our families here in Baltimore. This evening, we have a presentation regarding the Maryland Legal Aid's Lawyers in Schools program, and I want to welcome Amy Petkasik, who is going to lead this presentation. And welcome, Ms. Petkasik, and I'm going to turn it over to you at this time.
Thank you very much, and thank you to everyone this evening for inviting Legal Aid to come and share for just a few minutes what our program is and how we can help families involved in Baltimore City Public Schools. So the name of our program is Lawyer in the Schools. It's grant funded through a federal grant, and it started last October. Next slide. So what we are at Maryland Legal Aid is the largest provider of free civil legal services in Maryland. We have about 350 employees, many of whom are attorneys, and we provide free civil legal help to every Marylander that may need it. So that's every type of law that's not criminal and not immigration related. We provide high quality legal services, everything from brief advice all the way through in-court representation. Next slide. So this program specifically aims to connect families and community members associated with Baltimore City Schools with free pro bono volunteer attorneys to give legal help to those who need it. The goal of the legal help is to stabilize families. So whether there's a family that's about to be wrongfully evicted, if they're evicted, they would have to leave their school and the children would have to start all over. If legal aid can prevent that eviction, the children could stay in their school. If there's a family where a parent is suffering from domestic violence and the children are experiencing related trauma, legal aid can assist with protective orders and other family law assistance. So the idea is really to stabilize the family and the broader community around the students. So this program started last October with in-person clinics in 10 Baltimore City public schools, 1 high school, Mervo, and 9 elementary middle schools in different regions across the city. And it has been going wonderfully, great success, but as you know, students and families are not in schools right now, and so lawyers are not in schools either. And so the reason I'm speaking tonight is because as we've transitioned the program to a virtual model, it provides more opportunities for us to connect with not just families from our assigned schools, but from a family of any Baltimore City school student across the entire city region. And so the virtual learning with a lawyer is happening through a daily hotline and an email address, and then follow-up one-on-one consults. So if someone wants to email in a problem, concern, a legal question, and if they want to call in, then there will be individual learning with a lawyer sessions and follow-ups that occur after that, so we can provide the free legal help that is needed. Next slide. So these are an overview of some of the types of issues that we can help with, and a lot of these are really important right now in this crazy time of pandemic and shutdown. Unemployment insurance has changed a lot. There's many more options available to many more people now. People who are Uber and Lyft drivers who were used to not qualify for unemployment, and now they do. And the amount of unemployment and how long it lasts for has changed. So we can advise on all those issues. Any questions about the stimulus payment? People that may have been claimed as an dependent, but now they have a new child and it's a confusing situation for them. We answer all of those types of legally related stimulus question situations. We also deal with housing. You know, evictions are paused right now in Maryland, but people still should be paying their rent. Many people cannot pay their rent right now, and we have a lot of illegal evictions and illegal landlord situations occurring. Government benefits have changed. Food stamps, you're eligible for much more now than you used to be under many of the new regulations. We do criminal record expungements to help get people into employment, federal bankruptcy filings, all family law issues. So whether it's child access, whether you're sharing custody, child support, if you're trying to enforce it, or if you're trying to modify an obligation, debt collection, any utility related issues and housing tax sale issues. And then there's a lot of issues that we've seen during the COVID-19 crisis regarding child custody and switching from one parent to another. And we are very equipped and up to date on what's going on with the legal situation in the courts in Maryland to address those issues. So that's just some of the issues that your families and city schools may be seeing that we would be happy to offer free individualized advice on to help stabilize those students and their broader family communities. Next slide. So we have a full-time, I'm the director of advocacy that oversees the program, but we have a full-time staff attorney and a full-time paralegal, Jenny and Chloe, whose names you see on the screen, and they are available 100% of their time just for city schools families. And so they are ready and able to take your calls and your emails from people in your school communities so that we can get them the free legal help. And the direct email address to get your questions answered right away by a lawyer is lawyersintheschools@mdlab.org. And any assistance you can provide as school community members and supporters as getting the word out about this program, especially during this time of chaos and uncertainty, would be so appreciated, because we know that people are out there who need help and we really want to be able to reach them. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Pekusic. Any questions or comments from a board member?
I have a question, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
So how is this information, other than this platform, being shared with students and families? And or how could we better support you in doing that?
So with the 10 schools that we had existing relationships with, we were in the schools once a week. And so we are working with those schools to reach the families we were already getting to know. So for example, Cherry Hill Elementary Middle, we went on their Instagram live with their community school coordinator. We're doing similar things with all of our other schools. But in terms of beyond those 10 schools, we don't really have those relationships with individual schools. And so we are open to suggestions. It's on our social media. And we are hoping to connect to other community school coordinators or any way that we can really tap into those who have connections with families in this difficult time and how to really reach families. We also gave out flyers at 200 of the food distribution sites. So the rec centers that were handing out meals, we gave out flyers. We right in March, right before things got a little crazy, we hand delivered them and then we virtually sent them afterwards in early April to all of the sites that were then distributing food to hopefully be posted or handed out when meals were handed out.
And Madam Chair, this is Bundima. I have a question.
Go ahead.
Okay, you just mentioned something about there's a law or in effect that at this point in this stage, a landlord cannot evict anyone. However, there are people who are doing it anyway. So how do you address that? You have a family that's in the street. There's furniture. Once it hits the ground, you have people who come by and steal that furniture. What do you do? Do you try to place them, or how do you handle that? I really would like to know that. Thank you.
Right, absolutely. So I can't provide individual advice on a certain situation. So we would tell the individual who's being evicted to call our legal aid number, and we can provide emergency assistance on the same day they call and advice. We advise that they call the police right now because any eviction is illegal and the police know that. And our families may or may not want to involve the police for different reasons, but that is an option because police are enforcing the fact that all evictions in Maryland are illegal right now. If the landlord gives any notice, we are able to stop them. 2 of my attorneys today stopped 2 illegal evictions in Baltimore City that I know about. So they were about to have their belongings on the street, as you described, and we were able to contact the landlords involved or their companies and stop that. And so you're right, it is happening and it needs to stop. And I think the more we get the word out there and the more that lawyers get involved, the problem is that it feels like a free world when the courts are not open, and some landlords feel like they can do whatever they need to do, and that's wrong. So those are my suggestions. Call legal aid, call the police,
Right.
And we can try and get involved.
I have a quick follow-up question. You have a family whose furniture is on the street. You have people who do this for a living, come by with trucks and pick up the furniture. If the landlord has been instructed by law to not evict, and someone steals all the furniture from the family, can the legal aid file suit against the landlord?
We would look into advising on actions that can be taken against the landlord. So I can't speak to an individual situation, but that is certainly an issue that we could definitely address with the family, yes.
Thank you very much.
You are welcome.
Thank you. And thank you again. And just a reminder to folks that the email address was posted there. And if you feel that you have questions and you want to contact this program, please do. This is for city school families. So thank you so much, Ms. Peckovic.
Yeah.
This is Commissioner Brooks. Can you hear me? I just wanted to
Go ahead.
thank you so much, Amy, for the wonderful presentation. I did want to check to see, are there, for the target audience, so for example, we have young people who might be experiencing some degree of homelessness or moving between families, like, are they still eligible to access this? And would they like need parental consent, or like, how does that work in this process?
They should absolutely contact us. We have attorneys that specialize in helping. They work with like the YES program and youth experiencing homelessness. And so absolutely they should contact us. We can deal with issues of consent if that arises. It does in some cases and it does not in some other cases, but they should absolutely contact us.
Awesome, thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks again. Okay. I'm going to move to our next item, agenda item, and that's the approval of the personnel, employment and payroll, the PEP, and the quasi judicial matters. Is there a motion to approve these items?
So move.
What
So move.
was that, Commissioner Reed?
REID, yes.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Bondima. Okay. And those in favor, Commissioner Bondima, you in favor?
Yes.
Okay, Commissioner Brooks,
Yes.
Commissioner Frank,
Yes.
Commissioner James Hassan,
Yes.
Commissioner McFadden,
Yes.
Commissioner Reed,
Yeah.
Commissioner Richardson,
Yes.
and Commissioner Roberts.
Yes.
And I'm in favor, and there are no opposed, no abstentions, so that's 9 in favor, so those items pass. I'm going to review the consent agenda. Board members, let me know if you want to remove an item. Actually, there's only going to be one that might get removed because, well, actually, there are two. I'm sorry, because the student commissioner is not with us. So the first item is 6.01, which is the social
Board
studies
Chair.
curriculum review.
Board Chair,
Yes.
Joshua, I am here, so sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, you're
Okay.
fine. I
Okay.
just popped in. It's okay.
No problem. So 6.01 is going to be pulled because for a vote, because Commissioner Lynn can vote on that one. 6.02 is the annual portfolio review, Calverton Elementary Middle. Okay. Those are the only two items that were on the consent agenda. So we'll be voting on both of those separately. And now I'm going to move to public comment. And we always begin with speakers from the recognized groups who will have the opportunity to speak for 5 minutes. And then after that, and my understanding is we do not have anyone who has signed up beyond that. So we will hear from the group. And our first speaker is Mr. Zachary Taylor, who's representing the Baltimore Teachers Union.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. So we wanted to start just by also recognizing the City Council action that was taken this week. The Baltimore Teachers Union has been a leader in building that coalition of over 50 organizations to help close the digital divide in Baltimore City. And we're really pleased that they came through with $3 million for digital devices, as well as $6 million for increasing food access. And we know that City Schools has been involved in really great work with that. And we have a number of our members who are engaged in that food distribution, and we know it's vital. We want to note that we're going to continue to fight for computers to be distributed to all students and keep working on that from K through 12, just as has been done in some of the largest districts in the state. And we're also pleased that the district is looking into mesh internet networks. While thousands of students lack internet access of any kind, many students who do have access can't rely on it consistently. Internet providers aren't delivering enough bandwidth, and many also depend on unreliable hotspots that aren't meant to have numerous family members connected to it at the same time. And the union hears all the time how concerned teachers are about the number of students who join a virtual class, but then are repeatedly dropped from the platform due to connectivity issues. And it can be a really frustrating experience for those students and families, in addition to the teachers also just constantly trying to make sure that student and that family can get back on. And I know the district has been working on IT solutions for this. Educators are also struggling with their own technology issues themselves. Many continue to lack district-issued devices, and many rely on their own laptop. But we do have several hundred that use district-issued devices that are very old. They're 5 years old, some cases much older than that. And some of these computers lack functioning cameras or microphones, and many of these older devices have trouble interacting with any virtual platforms of any kind. So that's a constant issue that we're hoping that we can help move towards a solution. A main point of stress that teachers are really feeling right now is just the workload, and I know this is shared by a lot of families and students as well. Teachers are spending countless hours, day and night, uploading materials, adjusting plans, responding to students, families, and administrators, editing videos, providing feedback, and so on. Teachers have always lesson planned and graded student work, for hours into the evening and on weekends. But during distance learning, the boundaries between working and not working have eroded even further. Educators are receiving calls, texts, emails from before breakfast through late after dinner. And it's easy to discount how long these tasks take, but teachers are responding to individual students, families, and administrators through texts and calls, and each one might take 10, 15 minutes, sometimes even significantly longer than that. And the whole day is just getting filled up. We constantly have to be on, and it's important to share with the board that it's leading educators to feeling increasingly stressed, exhausted, overwhelmed, and just sort of fried by the constant screen time of looking at a computer. We recognize that these same feelings are being experienced by so many of Baltimore's families and students. Parents have been providing their children with exceptional care. We see it as they get them set up on their computers. We see it as they try to troubleshoot issues. And as a system, we need to make sure we're collaborating with parents to create manageable schedules of meaningful work for students. We need to be mindful of how distance learning is being experienced by parents and students during all this, because I think in many cases we're hearing of a lot of overload. So in light of this tremendous workload and effort, during future school board meetings, the BTU is asking that school commissioners consider and really make additional changes to our current school calendar. And I'll close with just a couple suggestions. First, with regard to the primary election date, June 2nd, we know that this is currently scheduled as a no school day, as is the norm for election days in Maryland. However, this is not a normal election year, and one of the main reasons to have schools closed for election no longer exists, namely that our school buildings are already closed and they're not needed for voting. Likewise, in-person voting is being greatly discouraged in general, and there is no longer a pressing need for instruction to pause on this day. So we ask that the school board amend the calendar to allow for a normal distance learning day of instruction on June 2nd in the event that the state superintendent extends school closures beyond that date, which we anticipate. This will allow for greater continuity of instruction, will permit a full 5 days of instruction for that week, and it will allow school to close one day earlier in the year, and we think it will just provide a more consistent and continuous instructional week for students, and we believe it's best for students and educators. And many other school districts in Maryland are already considering this. Some county boards have already approved these plans, including Howard and Charles County. I know that Anne Arundel and Montgomery County, both of those counties are considering having distance learning on this day. So we're hoping June 2nd can just be a normal instructional day. Second, and I'll close here. Second, we're asking that the board submit a waiver, and I know this is being considered, to the state superintendent to allow city schools to engage in 175 instructional days this year rather than the typical 180. This is being done by nearly all, if not all, districts in the state. Baltimore's educators and students will benefit from ensuring that the school year doesn't extend unnecessarily into June, into the latter half of June. We note that since City Schools was one of only 3 Maryland LEAs that had instruction on Good Friday and Easter Monday, and many districts chose not to shift their spring break at all, our students and staff have been engaged in uninterrupted distance learning longer than nearly everyone else in the state. And we also want to emphasize that while school buildings were closed the week of March 16th, students received instructional packets, and educators across the city were working hard during that time from home to ensure that students had what they needed. Teachers, clinicians, PSRPs were in constant contact with their schools and students during that time, and they spent hour after hour during that first week of school closure figuring out how to build distance learning from scratch. And we want that time recognized and that work acknowledged. So we're already in discussions with the district, and we wanted to share that with the board. Okay, and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Someone, I believe, needs to check your mic because we're getting some background interference. But thank you very much, Mr. Taylor. And I'm hoping you have. I mean, I got to get the two requests, but if you have that in writing, that would be helpful also.
Yeah, I'll send it along.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we did not have others who signed up to speak this evening, and so that will end our public comment for this evening. And I'm going to move back to the consent agenda. Were there any board members wanted anything else pulled from that? If not, I'm going to ask for a motion to approve item 6.01.
Move
So
approval.
moved.
I need to tell me who you are. I'm sorry.
Commissioner Lynn, sorry.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second for Frank.
Thank you. And I will do the roll for those in favor. Commissioner Bondima, are you in favor?
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Brooks?
Yes.
Commissioner Frank?
Yes.
Commissioner James Hassan?
Yes.
Commissioner Lynn?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner McFadden?
Madam Chair, before I vote, I'm voting yes, but I want to thank the teaching and learning staff for the work that they put in to this review process and collaborating with the stakeholders that they engaged with. I just want to raise that and just send a shout out to the staff for their work with this. But I do vote yes for this.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for acknowledging that work too. Commissioner Reed?
Yes.
Commissioner Richardson?
Yes.
Commissioner Roberts?
Yes.
And I'm in favor. Okay. There are no opposed, no abstentions, so we have 10 in favor, and so this motion passes. Is there a motion to approve item 6.02?
So moved, McFadden.
Commissioner McFadden, is there a second?
Second, Bondima.
Was that Bondima second?
Second, Bondima, yes.
Thank you. All righty. Those in favor, Commissioner Bondima?
Yes.
Commissioner Brooks?
Yes.
Commissioner Frank?
Yes.
Commissioner James Hassan?
Yes.
Commissioner McFadden?
Yes.
Commissioner Reed?
Yes.
Commissioner Richardson?
Yes.
Commissioner Roberts?
Yes.
And I'm in favor. So there's no one opposed, no abstentions. That's 9 in favor, and this motion also passes. As we move into the information and discussion, just a note for folks that there are 2 written updates under the information and discussion items that are related to regulation changes in response to COVID-19. We're about to get a in-depth COVID-19 update, but I want to let folks know about those updates. They may be discussed as we go through this update also. So I'm going to turn it over to staff for the COVID-19 update.
Sorry, okay, it's Allison Perkins Cohen. Thank you, Board Chair. And so we've got, Joe's gonna help move the slides forward for me tonight so that we can move along to this presentation. So thanks so much for giving us the opportunity to speak to the progress we've made on COVID. We're really happy to be here tonight to provide an update on our response to COVID. An incredible amount of work has happened in the past 7 weeks to deal with to respond to this crisis. And the way we do our work and the way we deliver education has changed dramatically. Given the magnitude of those changes since the statewide closure began and the number of updates and changes that continue as we move forward, we thought it was really important to be able to provide an update to the community and to the board of the work we've done to date and what's happening in all the key areas we're focused on right now, which include making sure that we are a source of food for our communities, technology acquisition and distribution efforts, keeping our communities connected and informed so that as we move forward, and the many aspects of distance learning and supporting our students, families, and staff. I want to say, first of all, just how proud I am of the staff, students, and families in their response to this crisis. We've made a tremendous amount of progress in a very short period of time in responding to what is an unprecedented situation. The first day of the school closure announced by the governor, we were already had emergency meal sites up and running. We also quickly pivoted to make important changes to our calendar to meet the new timelines presented by the initial closure. And then we moved to use spring break, as Zach just talked about. Staff really used that time to work around the clock to prepare and plan for remote learning and develop a plan to help close the technology gap that we knew our students would face. We launched district learning in early April and then began distributing technology by mid-April. This has really been, this is the epitome of a team effort, the result of teams working across departments and outside of their traditional roles and the ways of conducting their work to think about new ways of doing business and problem solving so that we can meet the new and emerging needs of our school communities. In this unusual time, we have emphasized the importance of connections, connecting with our students, connecting with our communities. I think we have a lot to be proud of in that regard and a lot of success that we've made. And that success is really a reflection of the way we've done our work to get to this point by working across departments and together with the schools to meet the needs of the community. So for the next, so thanks for moving to the next slide. So one of the first things we had to do was really think about, from a staffing perspective, how we do our work differently. So we had to make sure that there were ways to keep our staff safe by really changing the way we do our work so that most folks could work from home. And for those folks who did have to do, couldn't work remotely, making sure that we had protocols and practices in place to ensure their health and safety. We also really tried to identify the key areas of work that would need to continue to make sure that people were fed, that students had technology, that our buildings were clean, and that we were providing regular updates, and then preparing for the distance learning. Next slide. So the Office of Human Capital, working with key other departments like our Chief Legal Counsel and Operations Department and others, really has done an incredible amount of work to offer thoughtful guidance to staff about work expectations during this time, thinking through how various categories of workers meet the needs of our students while working remotely or work on site using appropriate precautions to protect their health, and creating new emergency leave options that are available to employees impacted by COVID-19 or accommodating staff who are concerned about their higher level of risk of getting sick from COVID. Also, this is another area where I just can't say enough about the partnership and collaboration we've experienced. I particularly want to call out the work of our Chief Human Capital Officer, Jeremy Grant Skinner, and Jerome Jones on his staff, and the collaboration and partnership that they've done with the BTU and Pizzazza, who have both just been great thought partners in helping us think through and identify ways that we can all do our work to support the needs of our students. With that, I'm going to start to hand this off to a series of staff presenting tonight. Tonight's presentation is a reflection of the collaboration and cross-functional work represented in our response to COVID. Staff from across the organization has really worked very hard and thoughtfully, and we wanted to lift up some of the key staff who've led some of the work so that the board and community can hear straight from those staff who've really been working so hard on behalf of our students and our staff and families. We're very proud of the work everyone presenting tonight has done and want you to know that they represent whole teams of folks who are working with them to make all this progress possible. Bear with us because this is in this virtual space. We've got a fair number of handoffs between different folks, and so we just hopefully it'll go smoothly, and staff are each going to be concise in their presentations, but there could be brief pauses between the different presentations. And so with that, we're going to talk about food first. So I'm going to hand it over to our incredible Executive Director of Food and Nutrition Services, Liz Marchetta.
Hi, thank you, Allison. On this slide, you can see, photos of some of the work that our staff are out there doing to support really what is a community food need during this time. We have in the upper left staff that are serving meals. In the lower left, we have folks supporting the World Central Kitchen distribution of frozen meals. And on the right, we have folks lining up for a Maryland Food Bank pantry distribution program at John Rura. On the next slide, you can see kind of a summary of where we started out. We opened 18 emergency daily meal sites, and since schools closed in March, we have served more than 219,000 meals to students and families in our community. These sites are not, supported only through food and nutrition services. We have dedicated school police officers out there, nurses who are out there supporting, and the National Guard at 14 of our sites. When families present, they can receive 4 take-home meals per visit. And we have also distributed 3,840 grocery boxes from the Maryland Food Bank. These sites are also not limited to food. We have folks and some terrific site leaders from various positions throughout the district that are out there and making sure that folks have access to academics and printed packets that are there. We also have partners such as Young Audiences and Living Classrooms out there with art and science kits for families. Some of you that might be familiar with Great Kids Farm, might be happy to know that there are seedling kits that are, going to be distributed through some of these sites as well. And an important consideration for us is always the safety of our operations. And so there is a note at bottom here that, references the PPE allocations per site. And we are very grateful to the various team members from the district who have, made that a priority because we want to make sure that our staff are protected and that they are protecting the community as they meet these needs. The next slide shows that we have added an additional 10 school-based pantry sites, and with collaboration from the World Central Kitchen, we distributed 20,000 meals last week. We are continuing this week, and we will be scaling up these sites for the future as needed. These sites are also supported by the National Guard, and we will be providing access to academics at these sites. This is a list of these sites. These run on a weekly basis. So some are on Wednesday and some are on Friday. And we hope to continue this, for the foreseeable future. Thank you. I think I'm handing it off now to Sarah Heaton. Thank you.
Hi, thanks, Liz. I'm going to take a few minutes to review our technology response and wanted to acknowledge that while I get to talk about this work today, it has been led by our IT department and Chief Shashi Budala, Armsby Carbon, and Michael Radding and Casey Mengel, and also with a lot of support from our Chief Tina Hike Hubbard as well. So in early April, it became clear that Their continuity of learning plan would include some form of online learning, the ability for students to see each other, participate in virtual classrooms, and immediately share work with their teacher makes good sense. But we also know that many of our students and families don't have access to computers at home, nor the internet, and both are essential to providing digital instruction. So given uncertainties about the rest of the school year, we decided to distribute computers to students to participate in online learning. We've decided, like many other school systems around the country, to distribute Chromebooks because they are relatively inexpensive and easy to manage centrally. We have had Chromebooks in our district inventory for some years now. And once we took away those which belong to charter schools and account for computers which may not function, we estimate there are roughly 13,000 devices, Chromebook devices, in our schools which could have been distributed to students. Given that they are across the city and may not line up to needs of families, we also knew we needed to purchase additional Chromebooks. We did that, roughly 12,000 of them, along with some power cords to allow those school-based devices to go home with students. We continue to work with a variety of partners too on opportunities to refurbish devices and then provide them as donations to families. And early on, we knew we wanted to prioritize high school students with a focus on juniors and seniors. As this project has moved forward, we are now trying to get computers to all students in need, but we'll continue to have a focus on juniors, seniors, and the rest of the high school students because we know that gaining credits to them is really essential for their graduation, college, and career plans. Next slide, please. I'd like to stress just a few things about computer distribution and technology access. This is a long-term project. We know our first cuts at computer distribution will be imperfect. And while we are proud of some of our early successes, we know that we have a long way to go. We determined the need for computers through our district technology survey, and then we have been asking school leaders to review results, reach out to families, and submit additions as they have them. Our first wave of these distributions are taking place at schools, where we believe we can leverage relationships between school staff and students. And we also believe schools are a little easier for families to get to. Things are moving quickly as we have feverishly launched our distribution strategy. This slide was prepared yesterday, reflecting data as of Monday morning, where we had given out 5,600 devices. As of this moment, that number is closer to 7,500. So it gives you a sense of how fast we're making progress in the field. We believe this number will continue to shift upward in the coming days. We have conducted distributions at 40% of our schools, and we'll continue to make progress in schools for the next 2 weeks. But as I said earlier, we know that this is an imperfect first cut at device distribution. And so we are working to develop and communicate a plan for a second wave of distribution to devices who we've missed through the first round. I hope to have more details on that as the plan is solidified in the coming weeks. Next slide, please. Yes. As has been said on the board meetings before, is so accurate, you can't fully use a computer at home without internet, and too many of our students don't have access to it. Our team worked with Comcast to provide internet essentials to families, which is 2 free months of internet access for all households with children in Baltimore City who do not have existing accounts with the provider. We're grateful for the partnership, but it is not a perfect option for all families in our community. As some are aware, we are conducting a proof of concept on a mesh network. This is where you extend the range of school wireless into communities through a series of antennas. We hope to have data on how our pilot of this project goes, but in all likelihood, it too will not be the perfect solution. And instead, we will be patching together or braiding together a variety of options for families. And we believe that that solution ultimately will include some additional partnerships and opportunities for low-cost internet options for families. So my hope and the hope of our team is that we will offer a menu of options for internet access for families in the coming weeks. next slide. And I have the pleasure of passing the mic to Chief Tina Hike-Hubbard, who has been helping a great deal with that internet strategy.
Thank you, Sarah. Good evening, everybody. Before I get into the communication slide, I just want to add that the partnership work we've been doing that Sarah mentioned has been remarkable. Our partners have shown up for us in ways that have been so responsive to the needs of our community and our families. I have been on a road show with businesses, local foundations, partners to sort of let them know what City Schools is doing and also give them an idea of how they can support our work through food support, through devices, and through internet access. So I just want to take a moment to thank our partners for that. I also want to pause on the beginning of the slide and talk about our communications team, which has really stepped up in an amazing way to make sure that we are communicating with our families and our community around what's happening during this closure period. The minute that we closed school, we had a COVID hotline set up so families could call in and get information in real time about what was happening, where meal sites were, any questions that they had. That hotline is still active today. We're tracking calls and making sure we're answering questions as quickly as possible. We also have weekly family updates that are going out to the community on Monday and Friday, which give information about our grading policy, about our food sites, about the Comcast Internet Essentials, whatever you can think of. We are doing this both from a communications, from a district standpoint, but also giving support for our schools to do the same things. So we have constant communication to families and the community of what's going on. We also created Wellness Wednesday, which I'm super excited to talk about, given that the blueprint has our 3 focus of literacy, wholeness, and leadership. Wellness Wednesdays is a way for us to promote social and emotional wellness during this time, focusing on how families can support their children and manage this time of home teaching, and also support for the broader family in the structure as we're managing this time period. We are also obviously being on social media on a regular basis, and we've managed to get our television stations to broadcast our lessons as part of the academic support, and we're so happy to have that as well. We also are hosting regular CEO community conversations as well as CEO roundup. CEO community conversations is where the CEO and key staff have presented on Facebook Live and actually take questions live from families to ask clarifying questions on what's being presented. We can share information in real time. We're also doing the CEO roundup, that's during the school day, where we get the CEO just to have a casual conversation with the community and talk about what's happening and literally take online questions as well in real time. I also want to thank other staff members who have also signed up to do these Facebook Live sessions with staff and families so they can hear directly from them of what's going on our academic side or our wholeness side and that kind of thing. We do have a CEO conversation coming up tomorrow evening. This one is focused on youth engagement. We're very excited about that, to actually hear back from our young people about what they're experiencing, what their questions are, and that is actually happening tomorrow evening at 5:30. Lastly, I'd like to say we are so happy that we have had significant and positive media responsiveness to what City Schools is doing. We have local news from the Sun to local television stations covering our meal sites and our technology distribution and things that we're doing. But we also have the New York Times and the CBS Sunday Morning Show, we hope, is going to air a story about the work City Schools is doing on May 10th to highlight the fantastic work of all of these folks that are presenting to you today in the response to what we're doing right now. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to John Davis to talk about the academic side of the house.
Thanks, Tina, and hello, everyone. Before we get into the academics, I want to frame this with 2 things that I think are incredibly compelling. The first has been highlighted a little bit already, and it's just to the level that this is a team game. The way that different team members have collaborated across offices at a moment's notice in this virtual world, and frankly, in a pandemic, is just absolutely outstanding. I mean, when you heard Sarah Heaton speak, she mentioned people from ITD, from CAO, she mentioned Chief Hike-Hubbard, right? It really doesn't matter who is being asked to step up, they're stepping up. I think when Dr. Santelises has talked about leading from your seat, there are so many people that have done this in the last 6 or 7 weeks that it is one of the, I mean, as difficult as this is, it is one of the best things that I've seen in my career. And so when you hear the 4 executive directors speak in just a little bit about academics, I need people to understand just how many people are behind the scenes doing the work and knowing that it is really a team game. The second most compelling thing I've seen that I want to illuminate is a little bit based on what Zach Taylor said from the BTU a little bit ago. The way that principals and teachers have jumped into this is again something that is a little bit beyond what I was even dreaming about. When you think about it, we started with professional development on March 30th, and then a week later, there were over 9,000 Google Classrooms up. And that's because our teachers have stepped into an area of ambiguity and have learned a lot in this space. And that's because principals have had to give a lot of grace. They've had to show a lot of empathy. We've had to really we've really had to show our adaptive skills way more than our technical ones. And seeing all of that happen within our school-based staff is just so compelling, and it's so proud to work for Baltimore City Public Schools in that realm. There's 3 goals that you see on this slide that I also want to illuminate, and really these are the 3 kind of pillars that we walked into this space with. One is to make sure that we continue as much learning as possible while being very flexible. The second one was to emphasize connections and the connections that matter. The ones between teacher and student, school and family, and making sure that those connections don't just continue, but even get stronger as time goes on. And the third one was really a leadership one around making sure that our virtual environment is safe and nurturing. I think we've succeeded to a large degree in these 3. We can't claim victory because we still have a long way to go, but our start in the first 6 weeks or so has been absolutely outstanding, and I'm really proud to work with the people that are in our schools and the academics team that you're going to hear from next. Janice Lane will talk to us, starting with the next slide, around teaching and learning.
Good evening, commissioners. I just want to echo everyone's words that this has been a great lift, and especially want to thank our teachers and school leaders for the work that I'm going to be sharing with you around the continued student learning. So the opportunities of what we've created and how that's become a reality in classrooms. Originally, we worked very diligently over break to really create online learning packets that were available for students. We also printed those so that students that didn't have remote accessibility were able to get the printed packets for learning. They were grade specific, covered multiple content areas. Another piece that was in alignment to that work was we were able to partner with our partner for literacy and math, Great Minds, in grades K to 8, as well as young audiences, to produce television programming that was available, as well as online programming for literacy and math. As Tina Hike-Hubbard alluded to earlier, we also have weekly family guides that are developed each week and customized to grade levels to provide families both with the structures of what is the learning of that week, but also supplementary learning so that there are additional activities that families can engage in. We worked with teachers to develop both synchronous and asynchronous teacher-led online instruction. As you heard from our union partners earlier, this was a new way of teaching for a lot of folks. So we'll talk about what that training looks like and what it continues to look like, and also creating an academic support hotline for families and for students. Next slide, please. This just shows an example. These are available in all grade levels, but we chose tonight just to highlight grades K to 5 so you can see the comprehensive supports that have been designed and aligned here. So for English language arts, you will see again, as I highlighted, that Wit and Wisdom has what they're calling Knowledge on the Go. They are videos that are interactive for students, and they last anywhere from 15 to 45 minutes. We've also had such a focus over the year on early literacy skills that we wanted to ensure that continues to happen. So students are encouraged to engage with Amplify Reading to continue to grow in that reading foundational work, and that's available for grades K to 3. In mathematics, you'll see the same structure with Eureka Knowledge on the Go. Again, keep in mind they're available 24 hours a day online, or they're also on our television stations for families to engage with. Science and social studies both have weekly engagements with a topic where learning can extend across the week. In science, there are also videos available on television for grades 3 to 5. And in social studies, the lessons have been designed to align to the inquiry design model that students are familiar with in their curriculum. And finally, we wanted to make sure that we emphasized all content areas equally. So for physical education, fine arts, and health, there are also weekly recommended activities, as well as supplemental resources that both provide differentiation and extension for families. Next slide, please. Thank you. We were able to create a distance-based learning method and a hub for that information. So I'm sure you have seen our website that includes information around the continued learning. It gives the grade level appropriate packets. It also has the information that is fully housed where the learning sites are, where the food sites are, where the learning packets are available. As of last week, over 41,000 students visited that online platform. Our broadcasted lessons, our television lessons that we talked about both for ELA, math, science, and for the arts, can really be shown that we have those comprehensive pieces not only available on City Schools TV on Comcast Channel 77, but also on Charm TV with the cable channels there. They're also offering ongoing streaming of that work. And to date, over more than 30,000 households have viewed those Great Minds lessons online. Teachers are also providing that ongoing support. Chief Davis talked about the connections and the content. The blending of both is super critical to us. So we've been working with teachers to ensure that they have teacher-led, individualized, as well as class-based learning. So teachers are working with students in groups on Blackboard Collaborate to deliver live instruction. You can see as of 4/17, there were over 20,000 sessions with over 154,000 attendees. And our Google Classroom supports student engagement and learning ongoing. They're not always live with teachers, but teachers can set up opportunities for students to engage on that platform. And finally, our last slide here just really goes to show the thoughtfulness around the programming as well as the supports of the collaborative effort. So you will see that over 4,000 teachers, staff, principals have been trained in our platforms. There have been over 613 Google Classrooms that have been created in over 9,000 classrooms. 51,000 Google Classroom users, that includes teachers and students as well as administrators. Over 192,000 posts. So classroom posts, message information from there, as well as students posting work back up on those sites. So again, this just gives you a glimpse into the work. We know that this is ongoing work that we're doing and we're continuously improving. So we really also want to say thank you to the parents and students that have participated in forums, that have provided us information to continue to improve what we're doing. And we're always looking for that information. So thank you for letting us share that tonight. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Dr. Deborah Brooks from Special Education.
Good evening, everyone. This is Deborah Brooks, the Executive Director of Special Education. Next slide, please. I'm going to share with you the work that we have done in collaboration with other offices here within district office to ensure that we're providing FAPE for all of our students with disabilities, to include students who have IEPs as well as 504 plans, and to ensure that we are providing supports and services to the maximum extent possible during this extended closure, to include educational, instructional, as well related services. We also have partnered with our advocacy groups to see how they are working with the parents as well as working with our schools to ensure these services. All of our students with disabilities, to include, again, students with 504 plans as well as students with IEPs, have a continuity of learning individualized plan. For our students with IEPs, the special educator, IEP chair, and related service provider review the current IEP and identify the services and supports that could be implemented during this extended closure, and identify those services and supports and put those on the continuity of learning individualized plan. For our 504 students, the 504 chair and related service provider looked at the current 504 plan and developed the continuity of learning individualized plan for those students as well. These plans are being implemented in the classroom during instruction, as well as for our related service providers through telehealth to ensure that these students are still receiving FAPE during this time of extended closure. We worked very closely with school leaders as well so that they were familiar with what a continuity of learning individualized plan was by providing them a sample plan for so that they can also monitor the instruction that's taking place in the classrooms. Next slide, please. The timeline of supports that were provided, as shared earlier, all of the special educators, as well as our related service providers and our special education para-educators, were provided district professional development around the virtual platforms that were being provided through our distance learning, as well as our special education documents were sent to our school leaders so that they were aware and familiar with the expectations of what specially designed instruction would look like during this extended closure. Our parent response unit remained open and continues to be open to provide support for our parents during this time. We also provided professional development for our IEP chairs and 504 chairs on how to conduct virtual and telephonic IEP meetings, as those meetings are still being scheduled and taking place during this time, as well as our 504 meetings. We have also had virtual professional development for our principals to talk about the continuity of learning plans, expectations for what specially designed instruction looks like in academic support, as well as all guidance documents and any type of correspondences that are being mailed to our parents and families of students with disabilities. We've also held a virtual CCAC meeting in April where we had over 30 participants, and we will also have a May virtual CCAC meeting on the 11th. We also continue to have our parent response unit available to answer any questions from parents. And to date, we've had over 160 calls where we've supported parents around homeschool communication. We've linked parents to where their closest meal site locations are. We've also worked very closely with providing support for parents around work packets, as well as sending those work packets to them electronically if they ask. We also worked and continue to provide support for our families around telehealth services for our related services. And Chief Davis talked about the importance of connecting with our families. And so I've asked one of our school social workers, Ms. Kaplan, to just briefly share how she is connecting both with our students with disabilities, but also with our general population families to be able to provide additional resources for those families. So Ms. Kaplan, if you could just briefly share that at this time.
Hi. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak. I think being a social worker right now in the current crisis has been a really unique and very rewarding experience. I think what has become strikingly clear to me is that the same things that make me a good social worker in a traditional learning environment are the things that make me a good social worker virtually. It has been complicated and challenging at times. It's also been extraordinarily rewarding, like I said. Since we've been out of school, the majority of my time has been spent either providing telehealth services by Google Voice or Blackboard Collaborate or Google Meets, both to special education students and my general education population. At my school, I don't have a very high special education population. However, the needs of my greater community are really very large when it comes to counseling services and resources. One of the ways that I have been working to provide those services is by posting a daily helpful hint on our school's virtual communication platform. That's been really there's been a lot of impact with that. I've kept it very light in tone so that parents can learn different skills like stress management, other types of coping skills, how to support their kids through the social and emotional kind of challenges that are going to come from COVID-19. I've gotten a lot of really good feedback from that, and I'm really very thankful that my school has allowed me the opportunity to do that on that level. The other thing that I've been doing a lot of prior to school closing, my principal took a very proactive stance and had everybody in the building create Google Classrooms. For me, that was a little bit, I grappled with exactly how to do that because I wanted to protect the confidentiality of the kids that I work with. So to accommodate for that, I created a Google Classroom for everyone in the building. So grades 6 through 12 are in my Google Classroom, where I focus mostly on different SEL strategies, self-management, how to make responsible decisions, emotional check-ins. I recently sent a form that I got a lot of really good feedback. I'm going to start posting non-school related activities. What I'm finding is that kids are really bored. And I think they're also really stressed out, which they're saying. So both of those things have been good ways for me to link to my community. The other thing that's been really important to me during this time has been working with my school administration to make sure that the experience has been equitable. We took a survey prior to school getting out about the needs of our families. My school has supported me in mailing out about 53 mailings every other week with all of the helpful hints. So I'm assuring that all families across my school are getting that information, which has been extremely, I feel very, very supported in that. That is most of what I'm doing. I really think it's just a matter of kind of figuring out all the logistics. But I think I've done a lot of good work, and I think social workers in the district are doing a lot of good work. I think the social and emotional needs really need to continue to be addressed in a very clear and well planned out way.
Thank you, Ms. Kaplan, for sharing that. And I'm now going to kick it over to Dr. Pfeiffer and College and Career Ready.
Thanks so much, Dr. Brooks. You can go to the next slide, please. Thanks so much. So in our office, among the many things that we do, we focus on career and technical education. And so we wanted to ensure that just as there was continuity of learning in the other subject areas, that we provided that as well for our career pathways. Our students, our teachers are providing project-based learning, which CTE in general is oriented around projects, but especially for our seniors, they're focusing on projects in their career pathways to help them get ready for certification. We provided teachers with a variety of career readiness and financial literacy resources. There are many things that teachers are not always able to get to when they are working through their standard curriculum, but because many of our classes require equipment and different things that we now don't have access to, we are pivoting to be able to focus on some of those areas that we know are important as well. Students are practicing working on developing resumes and learning more about developing budgets and things that we are sharing with teachers now so that they can think through how they incorporate them throughout the school year. We have continued to provide support for our teachers as well in CTE, and in particular, because students are working toward a certification in their particular industry, we are communicating with both teachers and students that we are going to give students the opportunity to work on those certifications when we are able to get back into school buildings. So some of that work that is paused now will be extended past June, because we know how important it is that the students get access to those certifications and how important it is that they see the fruit of their labor. We also have worked really collaboratively on grading, and I want to thank Aquila James for a lot of her work leading this as well. For quarter three, because we were interrupted in the middle of the quarter, we gave students until April 10th to make up work that had been assigned through March 12th. That gave students the opportunity to submit missing assignments, to be able to follow up through our grading policy that allows for reassessment, and to kind of bring a clearer close to the third quarter work that had been assigned. Report cards have been placed on Parent Portal, and families can access them now. We encourage families to check the Parent Portal. If you need access, please do call our hotlines and we can walk you through that. But we want to ensure that parents can see their students' report cards as soon as possible. We are also printing report cards, and so those report cards will also be sent through mail as well. For quarter four, students are receiving a pass or incomplete. And it's not an incomplete that students will not be required to complete that missing work in the next school year. For this fourth quarter, the students can earn a pass, or for students who are not able to access the instruction at this time, they will receive an incomplete. For final grades, grades are the average of quarters 1 to quarter 3 plus exam grades if the student was in a course that had an exam at the end of the first semester. And students have the opportunity to earn up to 6 additional percentage points to their final grade based on the work that they're doing during fourth quarter that's currently being assigned. We wanted to give students an incentive to complete the work that's happening now, and also take into account that had things continued as they were prior to our being out of the school buildings, many students would have been working closely with their teachers to be able to make up some assignments and to continue their learning. We recognize that that's just harder to do now under these circumstances, and so we wanted to show some grace to our students in that as well. The scheduling and grading team has been working closely with our information technology department and our teacher support team to ensure that teachers have what they need during this time. We have done some trainings. There will be more trainings. One of my team members was talking about doing a 9-way call with secretaries where one person got on 3-way and called another person who used 3-way and called another person on 3-way so that they could all be clear on what needed to happen in terms of inputting grades and making sure that grades were ready to be reported. And I think that's just indicative of the level of collegiality and teamwork that's been happening during this time. So in terms of graduation requirements, we have 3 criteria typically that go into meeting graduation requirements. So assessments, service learning, and credits. So seniors still need to meet the district's 21 credit graduation requirement, and that has not changed. What has changed, however, is that both assessments and service learning requirements have been waived. And so students who were scheduled to do bridge projects, for instance, or to take a specific state assessment they will not have to do that this spring. Students who have not met the 75 hours for service learning will not have to meet that in order to graduate. The data that you see here on where we are with seniors is based on the end of first semester. So as of first semester, 62% of students had already met the 21 credit requirement. And we had nearly 93% who were on track if they continued to pass the classes that they were in. So right now, what we are doing is supporting schools as they support their seniors so that we can help as many students move toward graduation as we can under these circumstances. One of the things that we did in order to, we've used a number of different ways to try and connect with our seniors in particular about their transition after high school. We want to ensure that our students are getting connected with college or with career, and that this current circumstance does not derail them entirely. And so we have been using a texting platform called Signalvine to reach out to students directly. We have created a post-secondary kind of virtual counselor that's happening at the district level, that's sending reminders to students. We are answering student questions, connecting students back with their counselors if they haven't gotten in touch, but just making sure that students have multiple ways to get access to the help that they need. We also, as a district, created a transitions document for our seniors to answer some of the questions that we'd been hearing from them and to provide some guidance about what this fourth quarter will look like for them and some initial guidance about what things will look like as we move toward graduation as well. We also have been convening a group of nonprofits and community partners as we try to develop a virtual navigator center, we're calling it, to be able to provide post-secondary support for students in an ongoing way. So this is a really, really challenging time of year, well, challenging period for everyone, but particularly I feel for our seniors who were really excited about getting ready to have some major celebrations. Senior graduation is such a huge milestone, and I just want to say to any seniors out there who are listening that we feel for you, that this has not turned out the way that we would have wanted it to. So at this time, we have postponed all senior celebrations, proms, and graduations in-person format. And we will provide more updates district-wide very soon. We are exploring many options for what graduation could look like, for what proms might look like in virtual fashion. And I welcome all input from people who have thoughts on this. I'm looking forward to the CEO community conversation tomorrow night as we speak with young people to hear more of their thinking about what we might be able to do to celebrate them well during this time, because we are committed to doing that, even if it's not going to be in person right now. I will now pass it to Dr. Sarah Warren.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kaiser. If you can move to the next slide, please. Next slide. Thank you. Okay, so I want to just emphasize again all of the great work that has been going into supporting students and families. As we,
Sorry, Dr. Warren, there's an extreme echo on your audio, so it's very hard to decipher what you're saying.
Yeah, I don't know where that's coming from. It seems to me I'm not hearing it anymore. Are you still hearing it?
No, it sounds good now. Thanks.
Yeah, I think maybe somebody wasn't muted. Okay, we're good. Let me know if it happens again. So we are in the midst now of a lot of work, and this is, while I'm representing the Office of Whole Child Services and Support, this is very much work that lives and is owned by people across the entire organization. And I'm really proud of folks across city schools for the way everyone has been stepping up to support students and families during this time. We are also doing our best to support staff, recognizing that there is incredible strain and stress that comes along with the current situation that we are in. So we are focusing our efforts on three big buckets: students, staff, and families. And I'm going to talk a little bit about each one of those. So if you move on to the next slide. So our work for students right now, we've taken the opportunity that's been presented to us by virtual learning to experiment with some ways of engaging students around wholeness related activities that we hadn't ever managed to do before. So this has been actually kind of an exciting time. We've had a team, and I give a huge shout out to the wholeness team, which includes folks both at the district level as well as a number of our student wholeness specialists in schools, who have been working really hard every week to produce a new set of activities for our teachers to use in their sessions with their students. So we set the expectation that teachers would incorporate at least one wholeness activity into each virtual session that they run. And based on the feedback that we've been getting, it seems that almost every session does include a wholeness activity, which is great. We have activities by theme and grade band. So we are organized around the concept of being connected, compassionate, and courageous. So each week follows one of those areas of focus. And then within the week, we have a Mindful Monday. This should actually say Thoughtful Tuesday. I must have been feeling especially thankful when I was creating the slide because I've got it twice, but it's Thoughtful Tuesdays, Wellness Wednesdays, Thankful Thursdays, and Affirming Fridays. And there's a different developmentally appropriate activity on each of those days for each of the 4 grade bands you see listed. The other thing that has been going on at the same time is just significant SEL and mental health support for students. You heard the presentation by our social worker, and I think you can multiply that by many people across the district. Social workers, counselors, student wholeness specialists, community schools coordinators, administrators, teachers. People are reaching out and contacting families and checking in on students on a daily basis. And again, this is in our presentation, but this is a cross-organization effort. Because we cannot have student wholeness rooms right now in person, we have created virtual student wholeness rooms, which again is another sort of exciting innovation that we're playing with. Moving on to staff, we have been both trying to support our teachers. So not only do we provide the activities each week, but we also have office hours where teachers can call in and get support in implementing the activities, or just in asking questions about how to support their students as best they can. We have, for principals, started with our partners from ACABEN, which is our primary partner in restorative practices. As of this week, we have created peer wholeness check-ins, which we're calling Caring for the Leaders circles, that are designed for principals to have a safe space where they can just check in with each other with a trained facilitator to get some support and talk about how they're experiencing leadership in this current environment. Individual coaching goes on for the leaders who are already partnering with ACABEN as intensive learning sites. And then we are also providing online resources and guidance to help principals through their leadership. We are also very focused on trying to support families. The coordination of that effort is somewhat complicated. As I mentioned before, we've got people in many different offices working on outreach to families. And so we've been providing guidance around that and working with schools to coordinate those efforts so that when we call families, we are tracking what we are doing and coordinating the supports to families. We are making an extra effort to identify those students that have not been in contact with schools or who've been disengaged in some way. And again, working across offices and with schools to try to find ways to get out and find those students and ensure that they are engaged. And then special focus on homeless students and undocumented families to make sure that we are reaching them and connecting with them and getting them the support that they need. We have, in partnership with the communications office, been doing these Wellness Wednesday messages that Chief Hike Hubbard mentioned, but also providing daily virtual town halls where families can call in and get ideas for wholeness activities to do with their students or ask questions about how to support student wholeness. And then there are also helplines that you've heard mentioned before that families can call into. And I'm going to turn it back over to Chief Davis now.
Thanks, Dr. Warren. And Joe, if you have that special slide that we have a release for, you can put that up. There's really a couple of things I want to wrap up with before we get to any questions from the board. And the first one is that we are absolutely looking ahead and beginning to do a lot of scenario planning for what the summer and then what the fall could look like. The summer and the fall could have different ways that we might engage students. If there's anything that we can give them for the summer regarding texts, if there's any work we can give them, we just don't know yet. Additionally, what are we going to be able to do virtually? And then when we get into August 31st and when we start the beginning of the year, right, what are we going to do? Are we going to be virtual? Are we going to be in a school by that time? Let's all hope that we are, but we don't know. Will it be some hybrid model? So we're beginning to do a lot of scenario planning and looking at all of these streams of work that you have just heard from, right? I mean, you just heard from a lot of different people and it was a little bit long, But I think it was worth it because in the end, you could see the team effort that is clear across the board. None of these executive directors, none of the people you heard from could do it without each other. And that's a really big deal. We're going to need that same type of spirit as we do our scenario planning and as we think about the summer and we think about the fall. And then the last thing I want to pull up, thank you, Joe, for doing this on the fly. Like literally in the last 2 hours, this is a picture that was texted to me by an ILED from a principal because in the last 24 hours, the student received a device and was not able to be engaged before this. But now, if you look really closely, they're not just engaged, they don't just have the Chromebook there, but they're actually doing the Eureka curriculum, right? It's a math problem, and you can see the conceptual understanding there along the side of the paper. So literally in the last 24 hours, we've been able to engage kids, and we're going to keep doing that. And we're going to keep doing that because each group within Baltimore City Public Schools is working really hard. Obviously the school leader there got a hold of the parent. There was a survey that had to go out. Either it went out through the school or it went out through central office that the parent responded to. We had to have good device distribution. We had to have our curriculum up and ready, and she was able to access it online there. And so there's just a lot of pieces that are put together in that picture. And in the end, she's doing math, right? And that's a good use of her time. It may not be the same as it was when she was in her teacher's classroom, but there's a lot of work to get to this picture, and it kind of exemplifies all the work that we're doing across the board. And with that, Joe, we can go back to the presentation and we can take any slides. Again, Joe, thanks for getting that up.
If I could, I would just like to just commend the team, Chief Davis, the entire cabinet, just really all of city schools. And it is, I was tearing actually when I saw that same picture. So it's a good sign, Chief Davis, that we are on the same wavelength. But I saw that picture online and started getting a little teary because within all the imperfection and challenge, fear and stress that this moment can bring, I can't say strongly enough and reiterate strongly enough just how much work and how committed just the full team of city school staff has been from, and I could literally go through every group of employee, and this is something I was chuckling with some superintendent colleagues that there's no way this is part of your certification. There's no way this is part of your training, but what it is people coming together and working on behalf of those children, those two little girls that you saw in that picture. And you only do that when the work is beyond just the technical pieces that we see. People have missed vacations across the organization. They have worked late in the night across the organization, because I can say that the overwhelming majority of people who work and serve in city schools had that picture of those little girls and other children just like her across this city in their mind's eye when they do their work. And I just have to add to what Chief Perkins-Cohen said, what Chief Davis said, and what everybody across presenting their work frankly would not say. And it is not politically correct, and it's considered mushy to say it's because of a love for this city that people are working to get better every day. And they are doing it for one reason and one reason only, because they care about the community, the families, and the students of Baltimore City.
Dr. Santelises and staff, I know other board members will probably want to chime in, but I want to thank you. That was the most comprehensive report that I've ever experienced, but it was really good to just see all that is happening. You should be very proud of your staff. I can tell you as a grandparent and board member, I'll do the grandparent part first. It is very obvious in what I see happening with my own kids, the kind of connections that are taking place between their school, and you know that takes a lot of planning for that to happen. So I just want to thank everyone. Please know that it is appreciated. And as you say, we are learning as we go, but for me at least, the level of what we are able to do for our children is just, it's beyond belief. I mean, if we had known this was happening, I don't know that we could have done more than we're doing right now. So thank you. I'm going to open to see if there are any questions or comments from other board members.
Dr. S., this is Vernon Reed. If you'd have spoke another 2 minutes, you would have cried.
That is true.
I guess I have my question's an equity question. I mean, it's because it's a really tough environment. And I guess Ms. Kaplan made me think more about this. We have 77,000 kids. From what I read, 41,000 are basically online. So ergo, we have about 36,000 that aren't online. So therefore, how are they being engaged in terms of the hard copy paper stuff? One, how are we situated with the hotspots? And I guess the probably overarching question is, I mean, as Ms. Kaplan pointed out, is the stresses. Because some kids are connected, some kids aren't connected. Some kids want to push on, but they can't because of capacity issues. So how do we get this whole salad to work?
I mean, I'll start with the, Commissioner Reed, this is John Davis. I'll start with the packet information, right? As students get packets, right? I mean, what we're doing at the same time is, is making sure that we make connections just through the phone if we don't have an online connection. And so if teachers come across students that have packets, they go through the packets with them, right? Now, they may not be able to go word by word and text by text, but they do go through any misunderstandings and just try to make sure that they're progressing appropriately through the packets. So that's the best we can do right now if someone is not online. Others might want to talk about the hotspots or Commissioner Reed's other question.
Sure. So this is Sarah Heaton, and I encourage my ITD family to also chime in after me. So we face equity issues across two fronts, Commissioner Reed, one with device access, one in internet. I'll start with the first. We are anticipating doing some data analysis on what communities have not been reached once we complete this first round of device distribution. We are working to get a second round of device distribution plan out. It will most assuredly require or rely on information from principals and teachers, because we believe that they have some of that information about which children are not engaging. But we also will make sure that there's an avenue for parents to seek direct support from the district. I imagine that will take some weeks, months for us to be able to get to all students. It will also require us to do some triangulation with other organizations who are providing devices to the field. Chief Hike Hubbard spoke about her and her team's Herculean efforts to take stock of partners who are working right now in the field to deliver devices to families. We are, our ITD team is working on a way for us to be able to collect information on those students to whom they have provided devices, so we have a more complete picture of device access in the city, along with what inequities are sure to come out of that data. Second, on internet access, we are doing a pilot of those mesh networks, which are essentially further broadcasting wireless access into the community through antennas. using school-based internet. We're doing that in communities where we think they would particularly benefit from access to a mesh network, whether it be because they have populations that are less likely to engage with Comcast, say, for instance, if they are not English language speaking, or if it is actually about the geography of the community itself. These mesh networks likely work better in communities where there are not tall buildings and lots of density. We know that will be imperfect, and I pretty much have to say that we're kind of in process on looking for other partnerships to provide low cost or free internet access to families. This effort will assuredly require yet another survey of families, some more information collection from principals, and it will be a real work in progress for some time.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Commissioner McFadden, go right ahead.
Thank you. I want to just echo everything that our board chair has already said, and celebrating the work and appreciating the work that has been done. Just have a few questions that I want to talk about, and I'm glad we have the appendix also, where we're able to see a few additional things. I had some questions around professional learning and what that looked like ongoing. So it was great to see the support that is offered within the wholeness department, but also for teachers as they're developing in this process. So I appreciate that. I would be interested, though, in seeing perhaps some formative data taken from that to see how we are being responsive to the needs of teachers based on the rollout of that professional learning moving forward. On slide 8, if we could just all reference that, it doesn't have to go up. It deals with the sidewalk grab and go pantries. I'm curious to know how those pantries were, the sites, those school sites were selected. I see that they are, it looks like there are 10 sites, and they seem to be dispersed throughout the city. But I think about one of the areas that is the hardest hit in the state, and that's the 21215 zip code. In addition to what I consider a desert for food, the 21217 zip code, and I don't see these pantries in those particular geographical areas within the city. I don't know what the reasoning is for having these pantries, so I would like for that to be explained. Thank you, Joe.
So this is Allison Perkins-Cohen. I'm happy to jump in, and then Liz is on the call too, I assume, so can jump in if I forget anything. We have, really good partnership with the city in terms of the meal distribution work, and have mapping that we've done of our sites where we're doing distribution of food, as well as the city sites. We really worked in partnership with the city when we were contemplating adding these sites to use that mapping and look at areas. So first of all, one criteria was that principals had to volunteer and express interest that they were willing to host one of these sites. We really have, we're putting a lot of energy into hosting our existing 18 sites and staffing those. And so we needed principals who were willing to step up to really take the responsibility of doing these sites. And so that was one factor. But that wasn't the only factor. Then we used the mapping to really look at areas of the city that were not covered by our existing, map of sites that we have across the city. So areas that were kind of where the distance was a little bit far for families, and areas where there was high concentrations of students who live in that area, where we know we have a lot of student addresses in that area, and indications of poverty. So we looked at that in a few different ways, but we looked at SNAP information, which the city had to look at families who receive SNAP. But since we know we have a number of families, particularly in the Southeast, who may not be benefiting from SNAP benefits, we also looked at other factors like community conditions and farms rates old farms rates from when we used to collect that information to gauge where the biggest need was, combined with large student body and gaps in the current network of sites that we have.
I appreciate that. So this pretty much is enhancing the meal sites that we already have dispersed throughout the city. So that's good to know. I think that was a little ambiguous for me in understanding. So I'm glad you cleared that up. And there may be some members of the community. I know that several folks reached out to me within the past few days in reference to these pantries and why, were some schools able to have pantries and some were not able to. So I'm glad that you referenced that, but there may still be a bit of ambiguity within the community. Also on slides 41 and 42, they're in the appendix.
Commissioner McFadden,
yes.
One second. While you were speaking, Commissioner Hubbard texted me to remind me that we actually, just to finish your question, that we have 2 emergency food sites in the 21215 area that are also getting the grab-and-go pantry food along with the daily meals. There are also community partners handing out food in some of those areas too. So just want you to understand that would all be part of that mapping that we did.
I appreciate that. And Allison, since you're still there, can you just raise a little bit more about the cross-functional, the cross-agency work that is happening throughout the city? I know that we heard last night or Monday night with the Children and Youth Fund, things of that nature. We're hearing things that are happening at the state and the federal level. But how are we collaborating in a cross-functional way to benefit our children and our communities? It's kind of been touched on in the different areas, but I think it would be helpful to also raise that for the board and for members of the community.
Yeah, so I would definitely ask colleagues of mine to jump in too in the areas that they know. And but like in food, for example, and Liz should jump in here, we are part of this this city collaboration that we really look at. They meet, I think, daily still to think through the strategy for food distribution. And so, the city is serving meals at the Rec and Park sites across the city. Housing department is doing some meal distribution. And then, we have our sites. We have the World Central Kitchen Partnership that has brought in and providing the grab and go meals. We also have some community partners, like Kim Trueheart has her meal site that she's running as a community member. So there's a range of different partners that we're working with to provide food and make sure that we're having really great coverage there. I know that we also have a lot of partners who are supporting some of the technology work we're doing. So I know that, Tina, who's led a lot of this work, or Commissioner Hubbard, I'm sorry, it's old title, Chief Hubbard, has been working with Enoch Pratt to talk about possibilities for them providing wireless or internet connectivity. She's talked to the Digital Harbor Foundation, and she should jump in and add the other partners. But Monique on her staff is also, we have a lot of people coming to volunteer to work at our various sites. So she's pulling in various community experts who have expertise in a particular area we're connecting with, or can connect us with partners who have a resource like trucks to distribute various things that we need moved around the city. So I'll let Tina take it over from there.
Yeah, thanks, Allison. Yes, I've been doing a tremendous amount of work with my team, and I have to celebrate Monique Sims for a minute because she is the best partnership manager I've ever had and ever will have. We have been reaching out on a regular basis to every partner we can possibly think of who can meet the 3 identified needs of food, of technology, or internet access. And so, as Dr. Heaton mentioned earlier around the Internet Essentials program, Monique talks to them every week about mitigating barriers that families are experiencing trying to get online. Or we have coordinated with different, Sabrina Sutton's working with city agencies and partners and communities around supporting their food bank distribution. I am also meeting regularly with GBC, MPN, a myriad of groups to identify what our needs are, and also think about fundraising support to help us with the technology, food, and computer access. So I can go on, but I want to thank all of our partners publicly for their support and their intentionality. I have partners who are going out and buying Chromebooks for schools, and they are partnering with us to identify what we need, what kids need, and to make sure we tag all those kids who are actually getting computers through partners. Today, we actually launched a partnership network through Baltimore's Promise, a partnership with them. We're developing a partnership logic model to identify in the short term and long term how partners can actually best work with the district, identify how we work together effectively, both at the school-based level and the district level, and assess what schools need, what partners have to offer, and marrying those effectively.
Thank you. I appreciate that. On this, were you finished? Allison and okay, thank you. On this slide, I just had a quick question. When I looked at the, I'll just go to it. At the bottom where it says recommended, these are recommended for the middle school area. I'm not sure if Janice or Chief Davis can chime in here, but for the other areas, you have things specified for physical education, health, and fine arts. But here in the middle school, for the expectation of what samples could look like from day to day for students and teachers and their families, why is it that these are recommended at the bottom and not embedded in the top 4 areas like ELA, math, science, and social studies? It seems as if these are recommendations and not expectations for the middle school grades.
I can jump in. This is Janice. They are weekly recommendations that are available. Some schools are handling just how they're doing daily expectations versus the weekly expectations a little differently on how they're staffed with those different positions. So many are offering their physical education teacher may offer a weekly activity for different grade levels at different times versus daily. And those people are also available to support inside of the 4 core areas up top. So many are coupling together and thinking about an integrated approach versus feeling like one of the issues that we had to balance within the structures of daily was that teachers wouldn't be at their computer all day and neither would kids. So just really trying to figure out the best way as teachers navigate the schedule and schools navigate the schedule. Principals are working together with their resource teachers to have them support the core instruction as well as offer weekly versus daily expectations is why you see it reflected like that.
And I figured that was the case. I just wanted that to just be expressed to everyone to know that. So I appreciate
Absolutely.
that. Janice.
Yes, we definitely want attention to all the core areas for sure, including those that you see there. We consider them all core.
I appreciate that. 2 final recommendations are not questions. The others I'll send, but since we have everyone, I just want to say that in the information that is being disseminated, I'm noticing and I'm hearing throughout the community that there are some inconsistencies with information being disseminated bilingually or multilingually. So sometimes things are posted and sent out or disseminated in English, and sometimes there's a combination in Spanish and English. I'm not sure what the thinking is around that, but I would just encourage us to just stay consistent in that to make sure that we're reaching all of our community represented here in Baltimore. And then finally, I would be interested in learning about some sort of portal where teachers, students, community members can give feedback on this process for specific things, perhaps device distribution, perhaps online learning modules, perhaps professional learning. I know that the CEO is having her conversations, virtually, but I would be curious to know if there was a way for folks within the community to provide feedback ongoing and for us to synthesize that information as we are charting this new normal.
Commissioner McFadden, this is Tina Height-Hubbard. I want to just offer that the comms team as well as OAA is actually tracking all of the data that we are getting on Facebook Live, our parent comments, and actually rolling up that data so we understand what's happening from the general flow of information. Our family and community engagement team has also created a POSSUP survey that is a phone survey or can be online, We can actually monitor on real time, not like some gigantic survey that's district wide, but we can read out to teachers or families and they can give us real time feedback on particular issues of interest that we need to find out about. So it could be, for example, on device distribution or that kind of thing. Those will begin starting next week. We're also doing virtual listening tours with parents to understand how they're experiencing all this. So they'll be able to report all that back, the data back to the board in short term.
Thank you.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Is there some,
Frank.
Commissioner Frank, did you want to ask something?
I asked my question earlier about how the budget is impacted by this and how this impacts the budget, but I just wanted to say that I want to express my appreciation to Dr. Sanchalisis and her team. This was a moving presentation. I don't think it was too long. I thought it was exactly right. I'm blown away with the remarkable speed with which the team is responding to the crisis in the present tense because the work goes on. And I am particularly appreciative of the way that the team uses data to measure the work that it's doing and the accomplishments that we're seeing here. So thanks to everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
There are no other
Yes, Commissioner.
Do I see someone else?
Oh, Chair Chania, can you hear me?
Go ahead, Commissioner Brooks.
Okay, so I had wrote a question and I got a response, but I wanted to sort of toss it back out here. Was really thinking about food utilization across the city sites and to figure out in terms of, are there places or areas where we're seeing space or food being underutilized? And then sort of how do we begin to sort of redistribute those resources to other places to ensure that we don't waste anything? And
yeah, hi, this is Liz from Food and Nutrition Services. Thank you. Food waste is an important priority for us. So, I addressed it more from our daily meal sites. We do daily production records and make sure that, we expand, or shrink daily preparation as needed. We do have refrigeration on site at our schools that we do. In terms of looking at the, city overall, I think it is really dependent on the type of meals that you have. And we're trying to make sure we don't want to cut people off from services. There are many, many more meal sites throughout the city than we are responsible for. And there is a really strong network of pantry locations in community and church networks. And so what we have presented informs just a small slice of that. But as we move forward in the next, I want to say 2 months, when we look at meals and we look at these boxes, I don't think, in terms of things like the boxes that we talked about, the demand is greater than the need. And so there will be a layered approach. And depending on the service that we're offering, we'll need to use, the data to inform that differently. I don't think that there's a tremendous amount of food waste at sites per se. I think sites are really, meeting stuff and have the capacity to hold stuff for the next day. But I think those are great questions in terms of looking at how do we redistribute stuff. There are also a program called Middle Mile with Maryland Food Bank that if people are experiencing, just losses of stuff that will go bad, they can then donate that and get pickups through that. And the food bank will reroute that to locations throughout the city, such as, a soup kitchen or something like that.
Great, thank you so much for that information. I have a few more questions. I think where I'll start was particularly around and thinking about the social worker who spoke earlier. So given that we know that some students have gone back to homes that might not be the safest and the most supportive and have already been on existing caseloads, could someone talk about sort of the process for checking in with them specifically, and how and what resources and capacity has the city schools been able to support students who we already know or might be emerging with issues around domestic violence, which is up, or other forms of violence in the home?
So this is Dr. Brooks. I'll start. So for our students that currently are on our related service caseloads, They are receiving those services via telehealth. So for our school social workers, for those social workers who currently have those students that are on their caseload because they have an IEP or a 504, they are currently providing those services. For students who are the general ed population, as we're connecting with those families, and we're also providing telehealth supports for those students and for those families as well, as the need is arising, as we're providing additional community resources for those families. We're also still providing crisis support for our schools via our related service unit. We're reaching out to our families and to our schools to provide that crisis support, albeit virtually, but we are still providing that crisis support for our students, for our families, and for our schools. I believe our school social worker is still on the call here at the meeting if she wants to give some examples of how we are supporting the broader community in this time of this crisis, as we're doing it in many varied ways and different ways to support our community at large.
Yeah, I would love that if she's still here. And thank you, Dr. Brooks.
You're welcome. If she's not here, then I can get that additional information for you at a later time.
Yeah, I think if we could possibly get that later, and then we can move on.
If I could just add really quickly, this is Sarah Warren, that our expanded school mental health program is also continuing to operate. That's in 130 schools, and it runs out of our home and hospital office. So that brings extra mental health clinicians into our schools to provide direct services to students. And all of those partners who are normally would provide in schools are now have moved to telehealth and are continuing on with their sessions with students.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. And I just have actually just two more comments, and so no more questions. Moving forward, as we see some upcoming presentations, it would be helpful to know like what percentage of young people, particularly who were targeted for Chromebooks or computers, sort of what that total need is and sort of what percentage of utilization we have. That would be really helpful for me to understand how much further we have to go in supporting their needs. And then also for going back to Commissioner Reed's point earlier, when we say talk about specifically around tech support, like how many of our families are still in need of internet access from the survey that we sort of distributed. So it would be helpful to know sort of the bigger proportion and then the whole, and then sort of the specific proportion that we still need to sort of address moving forward. And that's all for me, Commissioner, Chair Chinia.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else?
So was that a follow-up question, or do we want that? That's a follow-up?
That's a follow-up. I think
Okay.
was asked for in future presentations, or if we can get that. Yeah, if you have that data, you want to send it to us.
Got it.
And I think that might also be a part of some of the conversations that we talked about that might be happening as we're looking toward the future. And that would be some of the baseline data for us to take a look at. If we don't have a specific question right now, actually, I wanted to really turn it over to Dr. Santelises. If you know whatever you wanted to add to this or your own comments at this time.
Okay, great. I just was going to ask whether you wanted me to take CEO comments right now. Do you want me to just move into that, Board Chair?
Yes, please.
Okay, great.
I don't see another showing up. Have I missed anyone who really wanted to comment on the report? Not. Okay, so go ahead, right ahead, Dr. Santa.
Okay.
This is, can you hear me? This is, I don't want to prolong our meeting today, but I just want to say something that everybody has already said. I am, as a Baltimorean, native Baltimorean who has gone through Baltimore City Public Schools, I am so impressed, excited about this report today. I think that you talked about everything that we needed to hear. Anything else that I have to add, I would like to send it send the questions to you. But like Dr. Santalisa, I sat here today and I actually wanted to cry because people who say anything about Baltimore City must say that we have hard-working, dedicated administrators, teachers, staff. You did an outstanding job, and I have absolutely nothing else to say but give you all kinds of credit for the hard work and the time that you have put in, and considering the fact that you were away from your family and your friends and your regular home life. But this is the new normal, and it's going to be a long haul. But thank you so much, and that's all I have to say right now.
Thank you. I think that's a great introduction. All right, Dr. Santalisa, take it away.
I know. I was going to say, after all of that, I probably don't have quite as much to say. I pretty much said most of my thank you already, which was the bulk of my remarks this evening. I do want, though, to also just take a minute to recognize the members, the partners in the philanthropic community, just for their collaboration support. Many of them have opened conversations with tell me what you need, not let me tell you what you need, which has been appreciative. They have come alongside us in ways that truly feels like partnership, and that is both at the national and the local level. I also really want to say thank you, and I'm really grateful to our elected officials. As Commissioner McFadden asked his question and heard both from a food perspective as well as even in advocating for our young people to have greater access to technology. Our elected officials at both the city and the state level, their advocacy and action on behalf of Baltimore City really should also be known, and that includes everyone, from the mayor to the city council, and as we referenced earlier, the major resolution that they passed just last night or a few days ago to actually come alongside and support all of the families and children of Baltimore City, and we will be able to lift more work in technological access because of that, but also our state delegation and the way that we have weekly calls with them. When we tell them we have a particular need, they are very quick to to really come alongside and actually put feet to the ground in terms of helping us leverage additional resources, and that includes even our representatives at the federal level, Senator Cardin, Senator Van Hollen, who have been working tirelessly to advocate for federal support of a lot of what the needs in Baltimore City are. So a big thank you to them. And then I also did not really get a chance yet to say this formally, but a big thank you to the Baltimore City School Board of Commissioners. And I can say your offers of both insight as well as just, again, the leveraging and connection to resources, being an additional pairs of ears and eyes on the ground. And, as many people know, boards make or break and often drive where many of the people sitting in my seat, whether they want to stay or go. And I will say, if there's no way I could have predicted a pandemic, but I can also say that there is no other board that I would want to be working for during this time, because the leadership, and I know it's different to balance wanting updates all the time to being really supportive. but you all have done a fabulous job representing the parents and families and students of Baltimore City, and you have made it actually easier for us to do our job. And then finally, I really just want to thank, families. I want to thank young people who, many of our young people and families, not all, but many on a day even without a pandemic, staying focused and engaged in learning is a challenge. And part of why the pictures of our elementary school students this week getting their devices and using them is that, look, home situations are not always perfect, but when we as a society have to be very careful about who we brand as caring about their children or not caring about their children. We do these knee-jerk broad characterizations of people, of teachers, of principals, and the reality is that what I have seen over the past 5 to 6 weeks of this that was captured in those pictures is overwhelmingly, even with the challenges, and let's be clear, there's dysfunction in every community. So to just act as if, Baltimore City and certain zip codes are the only ones that have challenges with child abuse and other things is naive at best. And what I have seen overwhelmingly are parents and families who understand the value of education and are doing what they can do to make sure that their kids are connected. And it is absolutely verifying and reminds me why I do this job. So as challenging as the last weeks have been, it has actually been a poignant reminder of why this is the work that I enjoy doing. So that's really all. I said my other thank yous to staff earlier, and that concludes my comments this evening, Madam Chair. And thank you in particular for your leadership and taking my calls and not pressing the call you later button when I call you. It's much appreciated. So thank you for your leadership.
Well, I will say, yeah. And I'll say one good thing about this time is, where else will we be except at home, ready for phone calls? So no problem.
That's true. That is true.
Again, to our CEO and staff. Again, I just have to say thank you and thank you. We have board committee reports listed. Most of the committees, I believe, have not met. But are there any updates that want to come from any committees operations? Is there anything to share?
I have nothing to share, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Policy.
Good evening, Madam Chair. Thank you. Sorry for the delay. Just wanted to update the community on the conversation about the emergency resolution that we discussed at the last board meeting. One of the challenges for leadership in board governance role is we have to have all policy conversations publicly. So when we toss out ideas, they don't get fully fleshed out as a group before we come in front of you. So we spent a lot of time at our last meeting, sorry about the sirens, sharing with each other our thoughts about what we needed to or wanted to do to be able to support Dr. Santelises in having the most flexibility possible, while also maintaining the integrity of the policy process and the board. The policy committee met last week, and in a really robust and kind and gracious conversation, we came to the collective decision that we do not necessarily need a resolution at this point. And so we're going to move forward as we have been, counting on the superintendent to be able to share with us any needs that she has for any large changes, and any updates that are relevant for us to hear. So I want to thank my board colleagues for engaging in that conversation and the community for providing the feedback along the way. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to that committee. Teaching and learning, I know you have a meeting coming up. Is there anything you wanted to share this evening?
No, ma'am. I was just going to make that announcement that we meet on Tuesday.
Oh, okay, thank you. Because if not, then I'm going to do the other updates then for upcoming meetings. Just to let people know, we had no procurement items for this evening. So we have a teaching and learning committee meeting. These are virtual meetings continuing on Tuesday, May the 5th, but I'm sorry, before that, on Monday, May the 4th, a reminder to everyone, there is a board budget forum. It will begin at 6 o'clock p.m. to 7:30. And then on Tuesday, teaching and learning, the next board executive meeting will be on Tuesday, May the 12th, and the public meeting that same day at 5 p.m. Operations Committee has a meeting scheduled for Tuesday, May the 19th. If there's no other business to come before the board, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Commissioner McFadden, is there a second? No one wants to
Second.
go home? Who is that?
Second, Bondima.
Bondima, all righty. Anyone opposed? Thank you. If not, then the meeting is adjourned. And I want to thank everyone for being with us this evening. And please have a safe evening and stay well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.